Black Sea Maritime Cybersecurity Conference, which we organize with our dear partner and member, Constanța Maritime University. He's also hosting the online platform in a very secure and reliable way. So we are thankful for that. We can say the maritime cybersecurity started, the idea started at the coffee table with Remus and Gabriel in 2016, and now we are at the 4th edition of the conference with international participation, with regional participation, and we are very happy about that. Since our coffee in 2006, in May 2016, sorry, we can say we have quite a few achievements that I'd really like to mention to you all. We have started the first Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity in Constanța Maritime University, which is accredited by the relevant authorities in Romania. We also are closer and going even closer and more efficient in our collaboration with the industry, with the Port Authority, with the Port Operators Association and patronages. And last year only we have launched the first master's program, which Professor Gabriel Raicu will mention in more details about that. And we are organizers of this event, the Black Sea Cybersecurity Conference, because I think we have a legitimate position, not only because of the collaboration with the industry, but mainly because we provide the international fleet over 30,000 seamen, and we have a mission, if you would like, to equip them with cybersecurity knowledge on board, and to make them part of the digital transformation of this very critical industry, which is called maritime and port industry. One of the last things I want to mention is that with your help and your participation, we would like to get together in an expertise hub of maritime cybersecurity here in Constanța Port City, and we are building little by little and developing that objective further. This event is part of it. Unfortunately, this year we have to be online, otherwise we would meet, and usually it's a happy meeting and joyful event here in Constanța. We hope next year we will be again in that position. With no further ado, I would like to introduce Professor Gabriel Raicu, who is at the forefront of all of our developments here in the cybersecurity domain, respected professor and friend, and one of the co-hosts of this conference and many other events. Gabriel, the floor is yours.
We can mention here the project of this conference, which could be one very, very good starting point. The project of realization of the first cybersecurity simulator, the first of its kind in the European regional context, as well as a series of other projects starting in the field of port digitalization and the links between cybersecurity and energy. The context of the COVID-19 pandemic has led to change in work paradigm. Usually all are working from home. On the other hand, by transferring work, all the activities at home, and on another hand, by large-scale cybersecurity challenges. Let's think about all the risk that was transferred from our jobs in our homes. That is very, very risky and very, very complicating during time, and will become more complicating in the next decade. Stanika mentioned at some point in his intros about our cybersecurity master study. Yes, it is intended to create a large team of cybersecurity professionals which can address even the worst case scenario which can appear in cybersecurity area in maritime field. Why is so different in maritime field than in other kind of activities? Because usually the maritime field supposed to be more isolated due to the specific activity, and for this reason we are trying hard to prepare the best specialists in order to be able to act autonomously, even if they lose their connection with onshore support and technical support and cybersecurity assistance teams. But I'm trying not to be very, very long in my intro, and maybe in the next time slots I can tell you more. Again, I want to thank you to all attendants on our conference, because it's a matter of cybersecurity teams, it's a matter of long-term collaboration, and it's a matter of a great project which can be continued year by year. Thank you. Stanika, please.
Okay, so in the meantime, we have Richard from International Port Community Systems Association with us. Richard, please unmute your microphone and tell us a few words just to introduce yourself.
Good morning all, Richard Morton here, the Secretary General of the International Port Community Systems Association. Apologies for not getting online sooner. For cybersecurity reasons, we have restrictions on which video conferencing facilities we can use. So this has been rather a challenge for us. So it's quite relevant to our discussion today. So I look forward to an interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That's fine. We hope we will sort out some of the issues in the meantime, and then when your session will start, everything would be okay, we hope. Okay, so we were supposed to have Mr. Sabin Sărmaș from the Romanian Authority for Digitalization. I'm not sure if he joined us in the meantime. If he did, he can let us know, because not all of us have filled their name, so we don't know for sure. Actually, we can find out. Yeah, apparently he's not with us yet, but we will keep an eye on the moment he's entering. Anyway,
Stanika.
Yes.
Do you mind if I speak for a little while?
This is what I was going to do, John. I wanted to give you the floor as a chairman of this session and present the first section, or whatever you want to do with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, I would just like to say, for those of you who haven't been to Constanța, please visit, because I was amazed at the beauty, the architecture, the fact that it's a coastal town, and I would recommend anyone who would like to see a beautiful place, certainly to go to Constanza. When I first went there, which was a few years ago, I was honoured and privileged enough to be asked to chair the conference, and that was from Stanica. And at that point, I then met Gabrielle and Rashik from the university, and it was then that I saw the true potential of what they're actually doing. As a key maritime port in the area, they have managed to put together a cybersecurity development program that is unparalleled in the world. And I believe that their particular focus on the maritime industry and how they're working with all the relevant authorities gives them a global platform to be able to state that they will be the #1 experts in the world in this area. And that's why I work so hard to talk with my colleagues and friends and ask them. So, for example, we have Malta here today, and I thought Malta, being a key port in the world, perhaps in one of the top 5 in the world in terms of the amount of cargo that they push through, I thought it was vital that these sort of links were developed so that we can have a truly global maritime conference, as opposed to one that's very good that it's focused around the Black Sea area. But I think it's important that we take that expertise and demonstrate to the world outside of that the level of skill that the university has developed in bringing forward its master's program, and the fact that Constanza itself is very much behind this. This is not just a university initiative, but it comes from the organisation of businesses that sit within Constanza have also fully supported this. And when you go to Constanza, which I hope you all will, you will see that the local businesses are very aware that you're there. They're very much in support of what we do. And I found it a privilege to be welcomed into Romania by such a esteemed university and by such very friendly local Romanians. So I just wanted to add that, Stanica, before we just went forward. I think that we still have the potential to make this a world-leading conference over the next few years. It would be good to get back to meeting in person. It's a challenge this year, obviously, but a challenge for everyone that we're meeting online. But next year, I hope that we can be back in Constanza and really build upon the excellent development links that we've put forward, both in this conference and previous ones, and build world-class research and outcomes from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the nice words, John. We almost forgotten about how quick you managed to polarize some of the keynote speakers, even in the previous editions of the conference. And we will be always grateful to you and to other friends like you for that. But at the same time, the way the conference managed to gather so many international speakers, even now, even in the previous editions, it tells one thing: the Black Sea is important. The maritime industry is as well very important, as we all know, and we are very happy that year by year the presence, in terms of relevance and in terms of significance, improved. For instance, today we have the Port Authority participants. We have Richard from International Port Community Systems Association with us, and many other fellows that will join us in this session in the conference as well. John, I can only tell you that in this context that you are one of the professionals that make cybersecurity understood for non-cybersecurity people in such a friendly and easy way, and all your presentations and presence in general is very catchy. Thanks for being with us. And with this, we would like to start the first session, and I will get back to you, John, to introduce our two friends, Daniel Ionita and Bidaros Gür from Turkey. They will talk in our first section. I think about cybersecurity during and after COVID-19, just to name it generically, but they will talk about human factor, about social engineering, about regulations. So, John, this is to you.
Thank you very much. It's not often that I get to introduce a panel of such high caliber. And today I have a privilege of introducing, firstly, my colleague and friend, Bidar, who I first met in the European CIO Association, where we were both participating. And she is very modest and very unassuming, but actually runs one of the most complex and largest pharmaceutical companies in Turkey. Not only that, but she's been awarded for her female participation in such roles. And it's an honor and a privilege that we have her here today. And joining her is Daniel. And Daniel I met initially when I first came out to Romania because he was heading up the CERT. Daniel has always proved to be welcoming, open, hospitable, and it was clear that his knowledge in this area is of a deep level of expertise. So I'm sure that together we have an opportunity to really discuss some of the issues that are facing us in the world of cybersecurity during and after COVID-19. Do either of you have a preference of who would like to go first in terms of your brief presentation?
No.
Okay, in that case, Bidar, you can go first. Get it done.
Okay. Thank you very much for your kind words, John. It's a privilege working and meeting with you also for me. I will try to share my presentation.
Please bear with us. This is the first time we're doing this, so we expect gremlins, but there's nothing to worry about.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
It looks wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I haven't started yet.
It looks good, though. That's
okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to give you a little bit about how the effect on COVID-19 in pharma industry all over the world, and also in Turkey, the effect of the COVID and how we manage in my company COVID period. First of all, I would like to give you a brief information about my company work for. Nobel is founded in 1964, and it's a 100% Turkish capital. Its headquarters is in Istanbul, Turkey. We have 21 offices in all over the world and export our products 45 countries in the worldwide. We have 13 employees, half of them in Turkey and half of the employees are abroad. We have 4 production facilities, 2 of them in Turkey, one of them in Almaty, Kazakhstan, and the other is in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Our aim is to increase the quality of the life through its efficient and high-end products manufactured in compliance with international standards. And let's go through the COVID impacts in the pharmaceutical industry in all over the world. First of all, healthcare system is affected. Resources diverted massively to COVID-19, and pharma healthcare professionals' face-to-face engagement falls. That's why manufacture, medicine supply chain directly affected by lockdowns and extended holidays. Second one is regulatory and intellectual property part. Regulatory is fast-track potential treatments and evaluate their impact in highly fluid situation. Governments moving fast to ensure integrity of medicines, supply, and accurate information. Third one is the restriction of the face-to-face interactions. Face-to-face interactions between healthcare professionals and pharmaceutical industry reps has prohibited. That's why in some countries, remote interaction has risen in same period. It seems in the near term, all face-to-face engagement, clinical or commercial, will be reduced. And what will be happening in the before the 2020? It seems possible downstream impact on APIs and generics. As everybody knows, China is significant and growing APIs supplier for global markets. And the US and European countries depend on the Indian generics. And India has restricted export of certain molecules. That's why we are expecting some downstream impacts on APIs and generics. Second one is impact on innovation. Restrictions on movement and the state of the healthcare systems affect clinical trials. Some of the countries, virtual running of trials is rising, but it seems there could be a slowing of approvals of products, and it will cause pausing on some of the products launches. Third one is country healthcare and pharma markets growth. Some markets will see near-term but long-term impact also. A global economic slowdown or recession will be waiting. Certain countries have announced delays in introduction or policies and legislation due to the COVID-19 impact. Those are the overall healthcare industry impacts of the COVID-19. And what will happen in Turkey? In Turkey, government introduced some extensions on healthcare and drug system management. Based on the curfew restrictions, people at age 65 and over can receive their drugs for chronic disease by free home delivery. And some hospitals have been announced as COVID-19 center, and other applications are not accepted. Government declared some intensives not to demotivate healthcare professionals. Pharmacies continue their work through medication window. Wholesalers continue their full force operations not to cause any dispensing issue, taking preventive actions. And let's continue what we did in Nobel. As I mentioned before, sales staff in pharma industry prohibited to work face-to-face. In Nobel also, so they stay at home and get online education since March 16. Production facilities continue to run, but we had to take extra precautions and give them some trainings. Headquarters staff continued to work remote, but alternatively, we work in office as well. sensitive employees against COVID-19 are protected and work remote. We put on daily executive board meetings and setting up an emergency action group for COVID-19. Offices are renovated according to the COVID-19 actions. We have been giving online information periodically to the employees. And also we put some useful information on the social media to inform the public. CEO of the Novel giving speech through online meeting platform Teams and inform all employees about how is going on, how we fighting COVID in this period. We also set up online meetings with doctors and experts on Teams, giving weekly useful information about how we protect ourselves and our family against COVID-19. And also, because of everybody is working remote, we should keep ourselves healthier. We give some sports and diary actions to the employees as well. We also give a health protection kit to employees and also their families. Since we are working very close to healthcare professionals, we also send some Nobel products and also protection materials to them also, because we know that they are our partners and they are fighting in the front for everybody. What helped us in COVID-19 period? Since we are using cloud platform, it's really helped us. We are using Office 365 and OneDrive, and we are able to make our meetings online on Teams. We have an MPLS network and VPN. So it's advantage to everybody can access all systems in secure way. We have a online education platform, so it's also advantage. It's also being an advantage for us because we are putting different kind of educational documents on the platform, and everybody can easily have and access the education. All our sales staff have tablets, and the other employees have notebooks. That's why it's also advantage for us, because during this period, everybody is in somehow work remote. Those are the actions we took. So my presentation is ending here. If you have any question, I can try to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bidar. That was an excellent presentation. And I'd like to take questions during the group discussion that will follow Daniel's presentation.
Okay.
I'd also like to say beforehand that I'm a native English speaker. And so for me, speaking in English is relatively simple, although it still presents its challenges for me. I would just like to congratulate all of you on the fact that you're speaking English, which is not your native tongue, and you're all doing exceptionally well. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Daniel, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bidar. Daniel, are you ready? Are you there?
John, I'm very happy to be with you as well as with the others. My presentation today will touch some aspects related to cybersecurity in Romanian health system, and of course with some reference to the COVID period. I will refer to this COVID period, even we are still living that COVID period, but hopefully the peak period past, and that's why some reference are made to this COVID period, even we didn't finish yet this bad experience. So the presentation will start with some consideration regarding to the Romanian health system. We move further to the cybersecurity of the Romanian health system, some challenges and opportunities in cyber medical security, and few words about CyMed, which is the newest cybersecurity structures the company I work for developed for providing cybersecurity services. I will let you know a few words about this at the right moment during the presentation. So coming to the health system features, Romanian one, which is structured on 5 pillars and highly centralized. Medical units are subordinated or coordinated by the Ministry of Health, National Health Insurance, House College of Romanian Doctors, National Institute for Public Health and Public Network of Health Services. In this 5th pillar, we can find hospitals, medical labs, pharmacies, and many other medical units. Around 57,000 of such specialized medical assistance units in Romanian health systems. When we talk about resources, are based mostly on the public funds and state infrastructures. Approximately 80% of total, according to Eurostat. And another issue in Romanian health system is lack of specialized personnel. The yearly number of graduates in medical education was constantly lower than the immigration medical personnel, and is likely this trend to continue. Romania having the biggest number of medical personnel immigrating in the Western EU countries especially. Now let's hope with this Brexit that in one country will not go anymore. I'm joking, John, you know why. When we talk about the daily the infrastructures, we have some obsolete infrastructures. The daily used medical equipment is, as I said, obsolete, and some new equipments exist but are not properly used due to the lack of experts and or expensive supplies and spare parts. So even if it's not encouraging, this is the situation, generally situation in the Romanian health system. And let's see how COVID pandemic found our public health system from the perspective of cybersecurity features. The same lack of cyber experts. You can imagine that it's a lack of medical personnel in this public health system. This lack of personnel is transferred also in cyber domain, because IT, cyber security, there are support services for this domain. And even if during the period, I mean, before the COVID period, during the COVID period, and in the near future, even the government will try to find some incentives for the personnel which is working in the medical domain. That applies only for the medical personnel, for the doctors and nurses, and not for other administrative personnel from hospital, as the cyber experts could be if they could afford to have them in their organigrams. Even if they can employ such an expert, it's hard to keep them, as long as the offer from the other private companies in this domain it's more affordable than the hospital can afford. So the lack of cyber experts exists, and also the budget for cybersecurity is limited, not only for cybersecurity, but for IT equipments in general. The IT equipment sits as the other equipment in the medical domain obsolete for the same reason, and I would say with the same risks. Most of the hospital devices, for example, run Windows 7 and Vista, which are operating systems that have no security support from Windows. Few of the medical units have, let's say, minimum security, cybersecurity equipments like firewalls, and they have, let's say, a minimum cybersecurity level. Also, there are some medical units which detain such equipments but not use them, not use that equipment, having no specialized personnel to install, configure, and to run this kind of equipment. And another category they use, but they not take measures. And you know what I mean? An equipment don't take decision. Notify, send alerts, but not take decisions. The decisions should be taken by the experts. I mean, to filter the traffic or something like that. All these are very well known by the managers, and they try to find solution for that. And during the pandemic, these issues become more pressing. And let's see what else appeared during the COVID period. What appeared? It appeared the necessity of teleworking. End of February, beginning of March, the hospital were in the position to have some teleworking with some part of personnel, sometimes with full personnel for a period, and they have to share expertise fast and secure at distance. In what context? In the context which the government said access forbidden in the hospital. Not only for the patients, you know what I mean, but especially for the personnel and more for the representatives of the company that provide services to that hospitals. Not only digital services we are talking about now, but any kind of other services. And what is the situation? Usually the hospital networks are not configured to be accessed from distance, not for medical nor for any other services. So when this necessity suddenly appeared, and of March, it was impossible to implement the necessary measures. Why? As I said, because of access denied mostly. Developing that were some challenges of COVID. The opportunities on the right side of the slide. We can say that developing in advance, configuring the distance control, not only for cybersecurity but in general for digital services, and having a holistic approach of telemedicine concept with medical devices connected directly on platform and being able to measure medical parameters and transfer it to a versatile form and interpret that messages in real time is the holistic approach of telemedicine which has to be developed. And let's hope that from now telemedicine will not be seen only a method to discuss from a telephone or through tablets. More. If you look at this slide, if you look at on the left side, foreigner speakers have to believe me. If you look on the left side, you can see in the headline that a group of hackers prepare some attacks against hospital. But this is the headlines. You can imagine when I saw this headline in that morning, I try to find in the content of the article what hospital were targeted, if I can find some of our customers in this list. And I found in the last para of article something that is like exists the possibility to block and disturb function of IT systems of hospitals. What to be very clear, I don't want to say that cyber attacks have not there were not cyber attacks during the COVID period. Of course, the cyber attacks are continuously in this domain, and not only in this domain. And this kind of period intensified cyber attacks just because the hackers exploited and still exploit an old vulnerability, which is human curiosity. Actually, you might say people wants to know what happened, what is new with that virus, how many people were affected. If you look at the headlines, once again, in the headlines, the hackers prepare to attack hospitals. But if you look in the content of the article, in the last para, you can find that it might be possible to this kind of prepared attack to be blah, blah, blah. So it was not an attack, it was a preparation. And it's not the reason to put it in the news, because even this kind of article could trigger this human curiosity, the old vulnerability I mentioned, and could make someone to offer to the hackers possibilities to be a victim. That's what I said. In this kind of period, the recommendation is to look after the official channel of information and to not to try to find sensational as someone want to spread. Of course, it's legitimate interest to find out what happened, what new happened, what is with the virus, how many people were affected, so on, and but only on official channel. That was a lesson learned from this period in times of COVID news. Also, if you go further to the measures we took in the COVID period, you can see, and I said it's like find the best in the worst. If you look on the left side, we can find COVID measures, prevent, protect, limits, which are obviously the same as in the cybersecurity measures, because we take temperature, we control the temperature, we see the symptoms. It's exactly what we are doing with the IPS and IDS systems. We wear masks during the COVID period, and usually we have to use our firewall like an obstacle, like a mask between us and the perpetrators. We have to limit exposed surface. We had to limit the exposed surface to the virus, to the COVID virus, and we have to limit always the attack surface and offer at least as possible to our to the attackers in our as a surface attack in our systems. And of course, when you remember stay home words, and that is to limit, could be transforming, limit the traffic to the legitimate one in IT. So it's a COVID, it's a virus. So maybe why the COVID measures are so similar with some of the main cybersecurity measures. Now, what it has to be done? Of course, authorities are working that, but not also. When we elaborated the law for transferring the NIS directive, having in mind that the medical domain is one of the 7th NIS directive domain. So when we prepared the law at that time to transfer this provision in the national legislation, we had I used to work at National CERT at that time, which is National Authority for implementing an IS directive. That's why I said we. We also thought to develop a market, not to let the states to be involved in providing this kind of services. So now the theoretically, at least theoretical, the managers of the hospitals, they have two options. To do with by developing their own structures, or to implement the cybersecurity measures with as a services provided by other companies. And coming to that, the Medicarum group, the group of the companies, the InfoWord, it's part of. I mean, MedCenter, besides MedCenter, Rotest, and Sampromed, developed SciMed, which is the newest cybersecurity structures that we intend to provide cybersecurity services to our customers. Objective for SciMed is to protect health domain, to detect, protect, analyze, response, and recovery services, to detect, protect, analyze, and response to cyber threats, and of course to recover services affected by in case of cyber attacks. Kind of services we start from basic and develop together to premium. This is the main idea, to develop together with our customers and to see what is all about in their networks, what kind of assistance they need, and at the end of the day we can reach on the 24/7 services, any kind of services in cybersecurity, detect, analyze, response, but also mitigation and recovery. So we are waiting for you. In less than 2 weeks we open this center, and now I let some room for questions, interactive discussions, whatever you are interested and you think that I can answer to this interest. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was a very interesting and innovative presentation PRL is doing. So I'd like to ask you both, please. Tell me, how has COVID had an impact on your future strategies in relation to cybersecurity? Can we start with you, please, Bidar?
Yes, sure. It seems we haven't worked remote before. I mean, especially headquarters. But with COVID, we have to do. So first of all, it seems especially the young generations, Y and Z is coming. They would like to work remote, and they see it's a normal way to work. It's not necessary going to the offices. So we are expecting remote working requests will come from the employees, because we got used to after with COVID. So it will be a new challenge for the company management, because before we thought that it's not a good way to work, because they may not work when they are away from the offices. So now we all see that it's possible and it's working. In the security perspective, it seems we need extra precautions to affect our knowledge. So I'm sure IT management, IT staffs, we have already done many things, but in the future, especially working with the new technologies, will request new security steps also.
That's great. Daniel, do you have any comments to add?
Yes, thank you for the question. So I hope I hope it was a kind of trigger. And now, the managers and the authorities do not ask themselves if we have to do something in this domain, but how to do something more in this domain. Because when I said, you remember, I said that the managers, they have two options related to implement the NIS directive in their entities as essential service operators. To buy this kind of services. It used to be another approach. If I have to do this, I don't want to say that it's illegal one, that approach, but not from this perspective, but not because it is illegal, but because it is necessary, and the COVID demonstrates this. We have to access our network by distance. We have to do it in a safe and secure mode. We have to use technology for health, to provide health to the people from distance, to protect them and to protect us. And we have to do it fulfilling the cybersecurity measures. This is the main idea, and this should be the correct approach in developing this kind of strategies.
And that's very well put. And I think that is a very clear and distinct timeline for the future in relation to how we're going to implement these strategies. So I'd like to thank both speakers for the first session, which was excellent.
Professor Gabriel Raicu is the Vice Rector of Constanța Maritime University. Please, Gabriel.
Yes, hello again. I am fresh introduced to you right now. I want to talk a little about our days and a little beyond in the next decade, because there are a lot of risks involving emerging technologies. We are all so happy when some new technologies appears, but there are some deep problems when that technologies need to be used, need to be addressed, and when need to be maintained from cybersecurity point of view. For example, if we can take in consideration the machine learning poisoning like a great risk in the near future, we can think about some similarities between human manipulations aims and tools, and extended that toolboxes to machine learning poisoning. Last year I sustained a presentation in our conference about artificial intelligence risks and about about exaggerating the hype of the importance of the AI, and to mitigate the risk to put all that problems in one single basket. Also, we can think here about 5G and some related problems due to the novelty of this domain, and also due to a new kind of software which will be written in this field, and also to the old software which will need to adapt to work to this kind of high-speed network. Also, we can think here about the great risk in the domain of the heavy attacks. And when I say heavy attacks, I'm thinking to a different kind of denial of services attacks, because if we have a very high-speed network, the attackers will use that advantage for them. Also, we need to address the blind spots proper to the AI technologies. The AI technologies today, it's in a sort of a clumsy stage. It's very good to make very annoying work and replace the people in that field, but that AI technologies needs to be in the future more adaptable to the reality. We need to change the paradigm about how to instruct an AI to work with the future threats. So, if we are trying to address the other risk which will be very common in the next decade, we can think about, for example, cloud jacking. The cloud jacking is very risky today and will be even greater in the future. Why? Because it's very hard to choose what is the best cloud to work with your conditions and your measures of proper cybersecurity. Also, the extended entrance on the market of IoTs multiply the risk in a very high manner. Already today, there are a lot of first devices in IoT which can be give away even for free, like in Google Minis, for example. But I think the most risky in long term will be the convolution between deepfake and AI technologies, because the deepfake can be used in phishing campaigns, like phishing campaigns already used in some former elections in the United States, but also could be used in 2020 by the APT actors to commit some sort of fraud and influence on several markets. You can see on this slide already a very well known deepfake made using the former president of the United States. I will not try to run this demo right now, because it will take time, useful time for other speakers, but it's easy and very useful to observe how deepfake could influence the political opinion and how could be used to influence market even at presidential level. Well, starting from these considerations, today most of our critical systems are very tight interconnected and driven by computers. Maybe in the future this connection will increase greater and more decisions will be automated. If that decision will be taken automated, the new kind of risks can appear there. The complexity and the connectivity of these systems directly impacts their level of vulnerability. Some people maybe would argue that in order to protect our system, we need to understand the hacker's motivation. I don't think that there's one motive here. There are a lot of motives here. But all that motives could make an object of study for maybe a new direction of research. Also, in the coming years, nation-sponsored organizations will continue to develop cyber attack technologies for defense and maybe much dangerous for offense. From this point of view, there are a lot of things to say. Financially driven criminal groups also will continue to seek ways to monetize cyber attacks. Maybe the hacktivists will continue to use cyber to convey their messages. The terrorist groups will also shift to cyberspace. And finally, people with no apparent motive who seek to demonstrate their technical skills also will continue to bug and to contribute to this attacker ecosystem. Well, there are a lot of weapons that could be used in cyberspace. I'm thinking here, for example, of a new kind of services biased in the dark side, which will arise in the future. For example, deepfake as a service companies with bad security. There are also some possibilities to defend our system, even if they become more sophisticated, in order to cope with a huge amount of data. First, we will need in the future to interconnect our defense systems in order to be able to act in real time. For example, if we take in consideration our system, it's not always sufficient to have even the good analyst in place. That kind of very good human analyst must be replaced with AI-assisted, artificial intelligence-assisted agents for common task. That common task also will increase the number of jobs in this cybersecurity area, because new professionals and domain expertise will be formed. Last but not the least, we will need to shield all of our system, but not in a common word sense. Because the countries and states and all countries on rogue countries will have a bigger role, maybe in attack different infrastructure, and the European Union and also the maybe Euro-Atlantic cooperation is needed to assure an increased role in protecting large-scale environments like power grids, water supply, traffic control, and maybe, to say frankly, everything around us. So I make a promise in the beginning of my lecture not to be so long, in order to prevent to bore the auditorium. Not to be bored is a very hard task, and I will keep some of my ideas and stances maybe for a more interactive session during this day. Thank you.
I'd like to say that you have the charm and the grace of an Englishman. So you presented that eloquently and very well. Stanika, do we have Richard Morton? Is he ready and available to speak?
Yes, I am. Thank you, John. Richard Morton here.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Excellent. Richard Morton is the Secretary General of the International Port and Community Systems Association. Has a high degree of expertise in maritime, and is going to talk to us about cybersecurity in the post-COVID world. Over to you, Richard.
Good. Hopefully you can see the presentation.
Yes, I can.
Oh, perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending where you are. It's an interesting time for cybersecurity, particularly for the maritime and airport industry. There you are. And I'll explain a bit about that as we go along. It's an interesting time for cybersecurity. Just to give you just a one slider on why IPSCA, who we are. Well, we're a community of communities. We have 47 members, the latest actually being just around the corner from Stanica, the Port of Constanta. So we're just welcoming them into the membership. So we have members 47 members operating in over 50 countries.
And they are here, they are watching you, your presentation, Richard. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so everybody can see the presentation. Yes. And they operate in over 250 sea and airports around the world, and also single windows. So for those that don't know, a single window is usually a government one-stop shop for all processing of information for cross-border trade, customs, operations, those types of things. So we cover a huge area, about 50% of world maritime trade and about 20% of world air freight go through our members' systems. We have about 1 million users plus of those members. That covers 50 billion electronic messages. What does that mean in practice? Well, if you go from one of our members, which is Port St. Martin in the Caribbean, they may do 5,000 a day. If you go to our other, which is the Chinese national logistics platform, Lodging, they do in excess of 200 million a day. If you go to our other, so again, it depends on the scale, but they're all sharing electronic information. And as I said, that's about 50% of world maritime trade, covering 500 million TEUs and 10 billion tons of cargo. So what have we seen in terms of vulnerabilities in the maritime sector? Most of these were there prior to the COVID pandemic. However, as everybody has gone digital, there are even more issues. Those issues relate to even video conferencing. As I said, I had difficulty joining and had to change firewalls, had to change browsers in order to be able to join this conference today. We have members from Africa that can't use Microsoft. They use Microsoft, but they can't use Microsoft Teams. We have others that can't use WebEx, others that can't use Zoom. So the post-COVID world is a more complicated place in that respect because the security issues have been highlighted. But when we come down to the supply chain, there's a huge number of different stakeholders within it. You're talking huge amounts of information, 200-300 touch points for information as goods move from A to B around the world. And how do you actually manage that, exchanging information? Because if you're going to be exchanging information, you have to open up your systems to receive it. And unfortunately, over the past, in the maritime logistics sector, cybersecurity has always been treated as an IT matter, or as a task for a safety officer, but not a business matter. We see that changing with the current pandemic. However, it's still seen it's an IT problem because it's about people as much as the IT itself. And the focus has always been on availability and not so much on integrity and confidentiality. How much is the system available? Is it 99.9% available? That's great. But the problem is, it might be available, but is the information contained within is confidential? Can it be seen by others? And core systems within ports can often use very outdated software. We heard that earlier in the hospital presentation. And there's generally quite a low security awareness of how to deal with things. So what do we consider as cyber risks for ports? Well, the cyber risk for any organization is any risk of financial loss, disruption, or damage to the reputation of that organization due to some form of failure of its information technology systems. You'll hear after me from Jesmond from Malta about some specifics, but ransomware attacks, hacker attacks, viruses, data breaches, employee sabotage, the list is endless. So we have to be aware that these are out there and how we manage it, and that it's a problem for everybody and not just for the IT department or the security officer. But in our opinion, managing cyber risk is about common sense. Always use secure protocols. How many people don't? Avoid email transmission as a platform for data files. How many times do people send Excel spreadsheets for crew manifests? And again, under GDPR in Europe, Excel isn't seen as a secure way of storing data because it's difficult to have audit trails in that type of program. But as the European Commission, they still use Excel for dropping and dragging for passenger lists for cruise ships when they arrive. So how do you deal with it? You need to have your own staff that deal with it or contract a company to do this. Under GDPR, again, you should have a specialist on data, and they need to expand that into cybersecurity. And the other thing is train and make aware of personnel and what their actions are. No USB sticks. Those types of simple things which seem to get missed. I did a presentation on cybersecurity for the International Maritime Organization. And one of the key things is don't put a USB stick if you don't know where it's come from. At the end of the presentation, 3 countries came up to me and said, can we have a copy of your presentation? Please put it on my memory stick. And it's like, however many times you tell people, it's still very easy. And so again, those types of practical common sense actions are critical. So what do we consider? Well, we have to look at one of the classic cybersecurity, and many of you are more detailed experts than I am in this. But we need to look at confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those three are also known as the CIA triad, which is a model designed to guide policies for information security. So you need to consider those three elements when it comes to all of your data and services. These are the most crucial parts. But how do we take action? And that's the other challenge we find. It's very good. We have lots of conferences, but practical guidance is few and far between to find. And because organizations and ports and others don't have those security officers with the expertise, they may be small ports, medium-sized ports. They don't know where to start. So it's a job for tomorrow, and it needs to be a job now. So you need to look at international standards. Everybody talks about, oh, we need standards for maritime, for cybersecurity. Well, actually, there are already standards out there for the industries. It doesn't tend to matter what industry, because the standards can be used within every industry. You need to do self-assessment. Know your port. You know your port better than anybody else. Where do you think there are issues? You need to make people aware, as I said. Make sure they're not plugging things into a USB port. There was a case where a ship in America, where they were loading, and one of the officers plugged his iPad into the map system, and it deleted every single map on the system. There was just a bug. And so the ship, luckily it was in port, had no maps because the electronic map system had been damaged. And that wasn't an attack, that was just a problem with awareness of people. And also you need to look at the network. Who can you talk to about this? Everybody asks us, tell us all about cybersecurity. Well, actually, we can't tell you details because it's a security issue. But you can, at a local level, within ports, create a trusted network to share information. We call that an ISAC, an Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So what is that? Well, it's a public-private partnership organized generally by sector. So in our case, the maritime sector or port sector and the rest of the supply chain, or airports and their supply chain. And participants just share and exchange information about cybersecurity. What's happened? How do you do it? They also look at analysis of shared situational awareness, mainly at a tactical level. What's happening now? This is what's going on, rather than a policy level. And we also have another important value for all participants. You need to build up a permanent network, somebody to talk to if you have a problem. How do you do it? And then you can use a traffic light protocol, red, green, amber, and white, where you can actually share that information in a secure and easy way. As IPSCA, we will be issuing further guidance on this in the coming weeks. So hopefully that's given you some idea with regards to cybersecurity and our view from the International Ports Community System Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. What an excellent presentation that was both informative and in-depth and nicely within time. Before we ask any questions in relation to your presentation, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jesmond Baldacchino. Are you there, Jesmond?
Here I am, yes.
Okay, would you like to make your presentation now, please? Could you share your screen if you would be so kind? Excellent. I can see your screen.
Very good. Thank you, John, for presenting me, and thank you for inviting me to this opportunity. I would like to just make a mention about what John said earlier about Costanza. I was in Costanza in 2007, and I do look forward to come back again because it's a beautiful place. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Jesmond Baldacchino, not as John pronounced it, because he's from the UK, so if he pronounces it wrong, it's Baldacchino, John.
I apologize, Mr. Montalbano.
And I am responsible for the IT setup at Malta Freeport Terminals. So a few minutes to say who we are. Malta Freeport is one of the largest transshipment terminals in the Mediterranean. And as of last year, we handled around 3 million TEUs, of which around 95% is transshipment traffic. We have been operating for 25 years, and we have around 130 port connections around the world. We are strategically located, so you can see the center of the Mediterranean location gives us a lot of advantage, especially in the minimal diversion distance to the traditional trade routes. As you can see, the differences that vessels have to divert to go to different ports, as opposed to Malta, which is smack on the trade route. Now we switch on to IT security. We've heard a lot about it already, so I'm very glad that this presentation overlaps on these. Just a few points we'd like to make that should make, especially management, very much aware of the importance of cybersecurity. And it's very important to know that this requires a lot of money to do as an investment, but also a lot of money in the people who will manage the cyber security part. Most importantly, it also requires strategy. So thinking beforehand what one should do before to prevent, but also should something happen, should an incident happen. The cost of not giving such importance to IT security could be disastrous. And now we will look at a small case study, which is public knowledge, what happened in 2017 at Maersk, and what's called an attack by something which was called NotPetya. It's very strange, I know, but the reason they called it NotPetya is because this malicious code was very similar to a known previous malicious code called Petya, but it was not it. It was just similar. So someone decided to call it NotPetya. So that's also interesting. What happened in June 2017? A very common hacker tool called Eternal Blue was used. Unfortunately, Microsoft had already provided a patch for this tool, but as also Richard mentioned before me, there are a lot of core systems which are not updated in time. And unfortunately, it's interesting to note as well that in the shipping and terminal industry, I noticed that we seem to lag a bit behind when it comes to being in the forefront when it comes to cybersecurity. So one needs to be really, really understanding that, as Richard also said, that IT security, cybersecurity is really not just a matter for IT or for some health and safety, but it is a C-level decision issue. So at the very top of the company, at the very top of the business, we need to give importance, very big importance, both financial and strategic consideration to the prevention and investment in cybersecurity. So what happened to Maersk? They had this incident, which was a ransomware. One has to know, just to see the figures, I will not read the presentation. The figures are there for you to see. So 76 terminals, 800 vessels. This is great. You know, this is very, very big. And they were really shut down. So everything, even telephony, was running on Windows and on servers. So they were just stopped. You know, the whole operation was paused. And you can see here some of the repercussions it had on the business. So just imagine, wait 2 weeks, literally, for those terminals that were affected. You could not practically not even send an email. You know, for example, one of the business drivers for such a business is booking on website. So your customers will look for opportunities if they have cargo to move from point A to point B, and will visit several stakeholders to see who will they choose to trust their cargo with. So just imagine if your website is down, what this means. This means not only losing the business, but also losing the business to your competitors, which can be very, very costly. And in fact, we noticed that Maersk suffered a reduction in shipping volumes after even they recovered, because some business is lost and never comes back. We can also see the astronomical figures. We're talking about a $10 billion loss overall. But some big companies, so Merck, which is a big pharmaceutical company, nearly $1 billion of losses, and the other known companies as well. Of course, we don't know how many victims were affected which did not disclose this, because they might not be public entities, or they might not be listed on public stock exchanges, so they will not to try and protect their reputation. They will not even make it public what happened here. So again, the point here is to emphasize that the investment and the importance must be given to cybersecurity before the actual incident happens, to avoid this happening. Once it's happened, it can be really be disastrous. And I have listed a couple of strategies that can be adopted. Some of them also overlap with what Richard said before, and that's good, because we have they are actually common strategies that should be employed. One point which I will maybe emphasize a bit is that around 40% of the breaches that are recorded are actually committed by the internal staff of the organization. And this maybe is quite shocking, but I think what one has to do is put the largest emphasis on education. So educate the employees, because some of these incidents by internal staff are mostly done without the implicit knowledge of the employees, or they happen as an accident. And one of the most common one is responding to a phishing email, for example, where someone is tempted to click on a link. So some training to try and determine and distinguish between a phishing email or a phishing attempt and the real one should go a long way. For example, one thing we do internally here is we run in very secret mode. We do a phishing test, and we send a phishing a testing, not a real one, a phishing email to all the employees. And after that, we can gauge who of our total employees actually reacted correctly, maybe by reporting it to IT security or literally deleting the email, but also who are those that actually fell for it. And then we can also, based on these results, we can mold or shape our training strategies to see who needs more, maybe than other areas, training in this approach. Again, some other notes I will make to emphasis here. One is to have a disaster recovery system, and everyone in every book and every consultant will tell you to have a disaster recovery system, but not everyone tells you that your recovery system should be offline, should not be connected to the network. Because if you have an incident, it is likely that your disaster recovery system is also hit, it's also affected, and you will lose that as well. So the ideal scenario is to be able to bring up a disaster recovery system from offline, restore the data from your latest backups, and continue from there. The second emphasis I want to make is the new danger from remote working. So we know what happened with COVID-19. A lot of companies had to quickly arm their employees with laptops and VPN connections to connect to their office. But the danger here is that a lot of applications and data were now becoming distributed, where in the traditional sense, they are always within the firewall perimeter, so enclosed within the organization. Now we started defragmenting and everyone having a piece of the data from the company on their laptops around potentially the world. So what we suggest is always to simply provide laptops, tablets, okay, but only to allow those to connect remotely to an office computer, and only to be used as a remote desktop and RDP connection. So your laptop at home should only be used to operate your workstation at work. All the data, all the applications and information should remain on your work computer. The laptop at home is only used for remote controlling your office computer. So, and maybe I should add one more emphasis. I've mentioned it already, but the company culture should be concentrating on the education of the employees to make them aware of these dangers. Because as we saw from the figures and from the incident we've highlighted today, it could be devastating. This ends my presentation, and I will be very glad to accept any questions at a later stage.
Jesmond, thank you so much for your succinct presentation. I'd like to open up to the audience now for both speakers to see if we have any questions both for Jesmond or Richard. Do we have any questions from the floor, please?
Yes, I have a question for Richard.
Is that Jesmond?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's unusual, but go right ahead.
Okay, Richard, I honestly was not aware of your organization. So I was wondering whether terminal operators are also involved and also are members of this organization, to see the relevance of terminal operators as well.
Yeah, as an association, we started in 2011 as a purely European Port Community System Association. However, we rapidly grew. And when you go international, the models change. So the traditional model of a PCS may be different in Africa, or the European model is different in Africa, South America, through to China. What we tend to say is sea or airport authorities are eligible. So if you're an airport or seaport authority, you're eligible. However, we do have, for example, Hellenic Port Community System as a member. They manage the port community system for Piraeus, and they're actually owned by the terminal. So there's a fine line. The reasons we're very clear about our trying to have the right membership is we want to share information. But we can have a chat offline after this anyway, Jesmond, about that support. In terms of cybersecurity, just for Jesmond, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's people that are one of the biggest problems. One of our members has had a problem recently, and it was from opening an infected document. How do you go about training people in the Freeport in terms of what they can and can't do, and changing that culture, which is always the difficult thing?
Very interesting. The training strategy we adopted was by, at the first stage, we actually got an outside trainer and created formal classes for the senior and middle management levels. So the idea was to instill that culture at the most important places. During this training, we had also carried out a small session for C-level executives. So there were about 4 or 5 people only, but it was more about the importance rather than the technicalities of it. On the second tier, we frequently send out emails, informative emails. For example, if there is a known malicious code running in the wild, we tell everyone about it. First, it addresses the fact that there is something in the wild, so people are aware of it. But secondly, it instills this knowledge, this awareness that there is something to do with cybersecurity and we must be careful. So this is like the second tier. At a later stage, which we have paused for now, of course, for obvious reasons, we will extend the classroom style training to even the other remaining employees. However, in the meantime, management who have been trained are advised, have been told to, as much as possible, to instill what they have learned and disseminate it to their employees. So it's like we have people with responsibilities, with persons who are responsible under their guidance, and they should be able to disseminate this information one to many. So hopefully this will go down to the organization. Another, and I mentioned it in the presentation, what we are doing as well is we're running test phishing exercises. We will be sending phishing emails for all our employees, of course, without any payload, so there will not be any damage done. Whether there is a need to continue with our educational campaign, but most importantly, which direction we will go. Because I'm sure there will be need to continue.
Can I just ask a follow-up question, John?
Of course, please do.
Yeah, one of the challenges we have is most of our members are actually quite advanced in their cybersecurity, but they're only as strong as their weakest link, and their weakest link are those in the supply chain. As in Malta, I'm sure, like in many other ports, you have small companies, freight forwarders of two or three people who don't have this sort of IT security. And what we've seen happen is that they have an infection, and because they're trusted by the rest of the supply chain, that easily gets infected. And again, the example you've shown, the main example you showed today, was one of those things. It just sort of moved on from one to another within the supply chain. How do you handle managing your supply chain partners, whether it's shipping lines, freight forwarders, and their security linked into your systems?
Basically, the way we manage that is by not allowing anyone to connect. So we don't have any systems which interact with other third parties. We have our own managed web portal, which is sits in our DMZ. It is highly secure. Security is built in intrinsically, and if a company needs to interact, they can use services on the web portal to enter information or to send messages, but we do not allow anyone to connect. In the very, very remote cases where we really need someone to connect, it could be a service provider or an IT provider. As I also mentioned on the screen, we only allow remote desktop connections, but the remote desktop connections are run over a secured and authenticated VPN, so they will not use any software of their own, they will not have any applications installed, and the only data, the only traffic that is traveling between the third party and ourselves is the video call. So, and these virtual machines, these machines are actually virtual. So they are created, used for the purpose, but then they are killed off.
Can I interject at this point, please? Firstly, I'd like to say that in terms of the NIST directive, I'm working quite closely with the authorities to develop NIST so that it has an impact on the supply chain. Because at the moment, for those of you not familiar with NIST, the Network Information Security Directive, and principally it currently focuses on the main provider. But I think as an operator of an essential service, it's vital that they look at their supply chain, and I'm developing a certification to match that, because it's clearly one of the most important areas that you've highlighted, Richard.
Yeah, I think the challenge is the continuity. We work with standards on the United Nations Centre for Electronic Trade and Facilitation, UNCFAT, and they come out with recommendations. And one of the recommendations that's been worked on for single windows, which are government one-stop shops for trade and cross-border, is about core principles. Because if you take somewhere like Morocco's PortNet, which is the trade single window, connects 15 ports, 9 airports, and 28 government agencies together. If that fails because of a security leak in any one of the stakeholders, because of course it then connects to 20,000 plus users, the economy of Morocco becomes a problem because everything goes through the system. And we know the NIS directive and those types of things, but it's very difficult when you have small supply chain players who do not have the capability. And in this day and age, even bigger ports, I heard one port that didn't have enough laptops, so I had to buy 200 laptops for all of the staff to work remotely. So as a result of that, where is the security? How do you build that in? So it's very interesting to see how the supply chain is developing in those respects.
Excellent. We have some questions from the floor. I know it's stunning. Did you want to ask a question? Otherwise, we have I think it's Horatium would like to ask a question.
Yeah, I will try to repeat. How do you plan to integrate the next level, which is autonomous operation, not only autonomous ship, all autonomous operation inside an in harbor area, into the cybersecurity chain of logic?
That's for Jesmond and Richard.
Well, I can try and answer for us.
Because we're just getting there here in Constanza, and
yeah. So for the integration of IoT, autonomous ships, we already have autonomous ports anyway, and terminals and things around the world. The key to it is standards, and actually it's data sharing. So you need to make sure you're sharing data. What we've actually found is the data elements that a lot of these new technologies are using, or drones, etc. The data elements behind them, they're very good at technical of how the drone works, but the data elements become proprietary. So what you have is multiple different data standards being used and shared. And as a result, that does lead to quite significant impact for cybersecurity. And you have to go through a very big and long-winded approach of making sure that they're certified. And it gets even worse when you look at the Electronic Freight Transport Information Directive of the European Commission, which in 2025-26 will aim to have all intra-European documentation electronic. How do you know who has your information? So cybersecurity, I think the principles are the same. You have to just build it into your core business. It's not something that happens to other people, it happens to us all. And I think that's the problem that we have. Don't see them as separate entities. If they're working in the Port Authority has a responsibility to make sure it has the right cybersecurity requirements for it. I'm sure Jesmond has a clearer answer than I have.
Jesmond?
Well, actually, I think it's you who hit the nail on the head, because you use standards and you use principles. So if you apply those two, and in our case, we have an IoT network, we are looking at semi-automation. So once you apply those two, then you will come up with the technical solutions which are pertaining to those two items. Also very important is to give the right cybersecurity importance to the quality of data, to the type of data. So let me see how I can put this. You spend as much money as is necessary on each item differently. You don't try to secure something which is meaningless, and then you don't secure something which is valuable. In our, for example, in our case, we keep also in mind, in the IoT case, how valuable is this data? What kind of demand will there be for someone to try and get such data in their hands? So that also determines what level of security you put on it. If I can say, Wi-Fi networks in terminals is a very common area where cybersecurity has to be really strong. And Wi-Fi network, as we all know, can more or less be broken into. But if someone actually expands a lot of effort to break a Wi-Fi network, what will they gain? There could be a disruptive reason, but from a data perspective, all they will see is really containers, container numbers, and locations. Which in real life, you just get a pair of binoculars or drive by the terminal, you will see them anyway. So there's no real value on that. So I think we should apportion relatively and invest relatively on the value of the data as well.
Thank you. Do we have? I think we have a question from the floor. Is it?
I want to ask a question.
I know, but there is a question from the floor, Stanika. I think we should address that. Is it Horatium?
Sorry, I thought I'm on the floor. Okay.
Horatium?
Okay. Yes, the first specification may call me Horatio. You have your name in your history, Horatio Nelson. It's the same name, but a little different spelling, okay?
We've heard of him. We've got a statue.
I know. You go maybe a couple kilometers from your spots in the center of London. I know. The statue of him in a person. Okay, I have for the Mr. Morton one additional specification to avoid the tax inside of the chain of the logistic chain. In my opinion, you have to follow 3 or 4 pillars. The first one is to use the defense in deep with the CM sensors, with the antiviruses, and with the ADS and IPS sensors, and the firewalls. The second one is good to use a virtualization, like a tool for data recovery, a local recovery, how to specify the Mr. Baldacchino. And the third one, it's very important, it's the education of the employees to respect very important rules. To don't use the USBs, to don't access any kind of unsafe emails and this kind of these tools. And I think if we use together the deep defense and the virtualization and the education of the employees, we will have a success for any kind of cyber critical information infrastructure. Thank you.
If I may, a very interesting comment relating to the Horatio, to the mention you made on the education of the employees. I think an organization must also bind the employees via a declaration that they will be diligent in applying this training. So it's not just training them and stopping there, but training your employees, and you make them sign a document that they are declaring that they have been trained in this subject, but they will also be very diligent to apply it, because training it, and then it just goes away, and people say, oops, sorry, I did something. So I think it needs to be followed up as well in this way.
Okay, Richard, do you have a comment?
No, I think we all have different ways of doing cybersecurity. We all have to work together to make sure that we are collaborating in order to be able to manage this risk. You can't get rid of it completely. You have to manage it. The key is about management of it. And firstly, as we've said, international standards, use what is out there. Secondly, make sure your people are aware of what they can and can't do. In the world of core community systems, our members are connected to thousands and thousands of users. So you have to be able to then isolate your systems if a user is identified as a problem. And that's one of the challenges we have, is isolation of systems. You need to be able to isolate it so you don't infect a fellow organization. And that's really where a lot of our members focus their work, is isolation of being able to isolate systems but still continue operating.
Excellent. Stanika, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a short comment, and I want to bring it, bring the audience to the local reality. So, Constanța Port Authority has become a member of IPCCA lately. The reason we like this conference is that we always come together, practitioners and academia and the industry, and we strive to make things understood on anyone's language. Now, coming to cybersecurity in regards with interoperability, because whether we talk about single window or port community systems, we talk about making people operate under the same environment, or make them be more interoperable as a matter of efficiency at the end of the day. The challenge is, before getting to a cybersecurity level, a satisfactory cybersecurity level, of course, our understanding of digital transformation, understanding cybersecurity, having the human resource capable to work with you in this direction. So my question to the two persons here that are part of this panel, but also part of a very important achievement in the industry. Malta is one of the biggest terminals in Europe, as far as I know, Jez can confirm that. What's, again, Jez, I know you mentioned a few aspects, but if you can, how did you manage to take cybersecurity to the board and make them understand and be with you? Because I can see you have a nice office, all equipped, and it's okay. And to Richard, normally in the port of Constanța, you will have an IT guy who does everything, and he's a part of he's in the office with other 3 persons, and he's crazy with everything, you know, he's overloaded. And Richard, whether we talk about single window platforms or port community systems platform, how do you envisage going beyond cybersecurity and go? How do you intend to make a port community system platform accessible to the boards of directors, to the presidents, to the owners of the business, so that they can plug in and be with you in a practical way? Thank you very much.
Okay, Jasmine, I think you're first on that one.
Okay, regarding the terminal, yes, we are amongst the largest in the Mediterranean. I wouldn't say the largest, amongst the largest in Europe, because we see some pretty big terminals in Northern Europe, which are far bigger than us. But in the Mediterranean, we are second or third largest terminal, not port, terminal.
Okay.
Can you repeat the other question for me, please? Can you be kind?
Yes.
How did you present cybersecurity to the board and the executive?
And work with you.
Very good. I think just simply showing, like we did today in the presentation, showing what happened in reality and presenting it as a possibility that can happen is already a good strategy and approach, that you can ask for something at 2C level, what you think can happen, but you can also bring an example with someone else. I think that's very strong. But also, this is all about disruption. What does it cost the company if there is a disruption of 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks? What does it cost? It can be measurable. It cannot. You cannot say how. So just by, and this is reality. So by pointing out that lack of action could lead to something like this, I think it's a good enough reason for the company to give a lot of importance to IT, but also to IT security. I don't think it's very wise of any company in any industry, not only ours, not to move to digitalization. This is the way the world is going. If you are left behind, you will suffer the consequences.
And Richard?
Yeah, digitalization means something different to everybody. So we have to be very clear when you're looking to senior management boards of ports, to supply chain users, whether it's the one-man company or whether it's the multinational, that there's a business case behind it. the business case for cybersecurity, as Jesmond said, is about securing your business from financial loss. And if you'd asked the question 6 months ago, we would have said it's about working together, getting the ambassadors. Now it's critical. People have realized that with the pandemic, that there is a business interruption cost. And they realize how important digitalization is, with many people working from remote locations. And as a result, that helps build that trust. From a single window or pool community system point of view, it's about being trusted. Pool community systems, part of their business model is being a trusted third party. They already have data from everybody, and it is shared amongst others, but only to those that can see it. And again, if we look at an example of general data protection regulation, I'm not a big fan of regulations, but that has forced people to recognize where data is being held, what it is being done, and how it can be done. The NIS directive is great, but it doesn't cover every circumstance. And how do you get the smaller companies involved? So it needs to be a collaborative approach, and people need to be transparent, which is why one of the recommendations we always say is the information sharing and analysis centers, where local people in a local environment can work together, understand the threats, and actually manage their risk much better. And that can then go to a regional, national, global level, depending on how it works. So for me, it's about trust and it's about collaboration. And I do think one of the benefits of COVID is that IT is now at the top of everybody's agenda. How long that will last will be a different matter. But we just need to see that cybersecurity is built into that at the same time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jesmond. Do we have any other questions? No? Oh, yeah.
Some question.
Okay.
I'm Gabriel, but in the brief I have a very, very short comment. Overall, we will see systems are smarter, if I understand well, much sophisticated and able to handle large population and large amounts of data. Systems that can be updated rapidly, that can take decisions in real time, and so and so. As far as the general public is concerned, also I believe that keeping ourselves cyber secure will become a commonplace as maintaining our physical safety. Today we are locking our doors, we put the seatbelts. Maybe in the future we will take special measures for cyber security. However, can be in long term in maritime field, and we have here some experts which can prove with their stance, if I'm interpret correct. It can be a maritime cloud or cloud-defined solution. Next step for the future cybersecurity in the maritime field. And I'm thinking here, when I talk about cloud, I'm thinking here to port community systems, to maritime single window or national single window, if we are thinking extensively, and so on. In fact, it's more than a question, it's a request for a short comment about this thing. Thank you.
So if I can be succinct about that, it's about the deployment of a global cloud solution in the maritime sector. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Extensively deployment of cloud solution in maritime sector, in fact.
I believe there are some solutions that are
currently deployed. I know that Jesmond is involved in a very large system. Perhaps you'd like to comment on that, Jesmond?
Actually, John, just to clarify, one of the principles that we adopt is to try not to go to the cloud as much as possible in our particular industry, because first of all, we need a very high speed and reactive network. So that's one thing you can't achieve very easily with the cloud, but also because of the security issue. So on the other hand, there are some organizations which actually require, and we cannot do without sharing information to the cloud. But in these instances, we try to go for a push solution. So we participate in global exercises where we contribute information regarding shipping movements, container movements, and they are then stored globally around the world, and the members can obtain the advantage of using that data in total. But in this case, we keep ourselves limited to just pushing the information out and then reading the information from a web portal or otherwise. But we do not subscribe a lot to having direct connectivity with third parties.
Okay, thank you, Jesmond.
Yeah, well, the cloud is just using somebody else's computer, if we're simple about it. There's a lot of talk about using the cloud. Actually, some of our members have chosen to use the cloud, some have not. They have service level agreements. It depends on your makeup. And if you look at poor community systems that were starting to exchange information 45 years ago electronically in some places, they were almost the original cloud. That data that you have is being shared with somebody else through a third party. That third party is a poor community system, which is a cloud in all but name. And again, I think that's the problem that we have with technology at the moment. People jump on to the latest technology without seeing the impact. We keep being told blockchain is the answer to everything. But blockchain is good, and it works in certain circumstances, but it's just another way of sharing information. And the problem we see is that technology is driving business processes, and business processes should be driving process change, which should be driving technology. And it is very easy for technology, for many reasons, to start driving business processes. So we need to make sure, don't ask, why should we use the cloud, is what benefits is it? Just because somebody else is using it, it may not suit you. And it's the same with every other technology. How is it going to benefit? What is the business case of using blockchain over EDI messaging? Milliseconds.
I think Jesmond wants to come back in there. Jesmond?
Yes, Richard has made a really, really good point. It's about making a business case out of the technology and not the other way around. So not because there's a technology and I want to use it, but first the business case should come up. Yeah. Specifically regarding blockchain, but this will also give you my view on the cloud also. The blockchain unfortunately evolved from a technology which was created to serve a purpose, particularly, and then the technology was standing around. And it became, in my opinion, a situation of, I have a solution, what is your problem? Yeah. And this is not the way things are normally done in a business. The second emphasis I wanted to make is that these risks of connecting to clouds or other entities was also highlighted very much in the training that were provided, the training which I mentioned previously. And John, you are very well aware because you are the one who delivered the training to us. We were very much made aware that connecting to outside the perimeter is where the danger starts. So that is why we have to really be careful when starting to connecting to cloud, to third parties, and so on.
Thank you. And thank you all. I think one of the most important elements that's come out of this last part of the conversation is cybersecurity awareness and strategy start at board level. And if they have that understanding at board level, then they're not looking for solutions for technology. They're looking to implement a strategic planning process and bring technology in line with that. And whatever form that takes is a decision made at board level, as opposed to by vendors or by fashion. So at this point, it would be wonderful to thank our speakers. Jesmond, thank you very much. Richard, thank you very much. Binar is no longer with us, but I'd also like to thank. And we also have Daniel, whose contribution was truly excellent and informative and made a good contrast in relation to what Binar was saying from the health sector, from the pharmaceutical side, and from the delivery side. We have other sessions that we will be presenting. Stanik is going to give the dates.
of the next. I believe you have 2 more sessions. Is that right, Stanika?
Yes, there will be 2 other sessions and one final session where we all will be invited for a debrief of the conference.
Unfortunately, there was not enough time for me to speak today. Some of you may be quite pleased about that, but also Hugo didn't get a chance to speak, so we're going to try and squeeze that in another one of the sessions at a later date. So at this point, Stanika, if it's okay with you, I would like to formally close this session and say thank you very much to everyone who attended. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. It's through sharing of knowledge and cooperation and understanding that we grow and develop and become stronger in what we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
So you can leave if you want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day and nice session in the future.
See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Make sure you wear a patch.